Hi, Lynn. Welcome to the NTM Growth Marketing Podcast. It's an honor to be speaking with you today.
Thank you so much, Andrew. It's so nice to connect with you and chat today. I'm looking forward to it.
Same here. And I'm very glad we're speaking because there's actually been a few Allegheny alumni we've spoke to in the last couple of episodes, you now being an additional one. And I'd love to hear a little bit more around what was your journey like post Allegheny and how did it eventually lead to your current organization?
Yeah. Happy to kind of walk through that journey. And happy to join the ranks of other Allegheny alums that have been on your podcast. So that's really exciting. So I am in Allegheny. I was a political science major and a women's studies minor. Whenever I graduated, I already knew that I was going to go on to George Washington University to get my master's in political management. At the time, I definitely thought I was going to be a campaign manager out on the campaign trail. That had really appealed to me, had done some volunteer work while at Allegheny for some different campaigns that were local, and kind of caught a little bit of that bug. But as I started to get into my curriculum at GW, I really started to see an exciting kind of parallel path to that, which is the world of issue advocacy. So it's really kind of working in that public affairs space where you're helping different companies, organizations, associations to impact some change that they're looking for at the legislative level. So it's a lot of the same kind of things that you would do if you were working strictly with a political candidate, but you're kind of broadening that scope a little bit to kind of look beyond just, one district or one state or whatever, and just really kind of looking at that issue at large and how you get people from all walks of life on board with that. So I really kind of got interested in that. I joined up with DCI Group on the heels of my time at GW, where I also served as a marketing assistant at my grad school while I was attending and getting my master's degree. So had some great experience there and just
Was
kind of
just to
working.
interject real quick, was DCI the name of the company you're involved with?
Yes, after my time at GW, I was at DCI Group, which is a DC-based public affairs company. So they cover a lot of different issue areas. I primarily worked in the energy and telecom team there, so kind of supporting across those clients and whatever the issue du jour of the day was, and helping to support those clients as part of the digital team. So I will say another thing that kind of surprised me and I kind of just fell into as I moved through my graduate degree was, definitely a love for the digital space. And that was something where, again, it just kind of caught me by surprise. And all of a sudden I was just kind of in the thick of it where I was really interested in digital marketing and figuring out how to leverage, these newer channels that were really coming to light,
Facebook
especially
was cool back then.
Facebook was still cool. It was one of the biggest ones then. Twitter, LinkedIn wasn't really, that was more of like your Rolodex and just kind of acquiring some of your professional contacts there. It wasn't as much of a communications channel. And then there was, MySpace would have been fading out at that point. But yeah, so very much kind of got to see the growth of the digital marketing industry from the front end, really kind of had that front row seat to kind of watch its evolution from what was, kind of not to say immature application of how to use those, but definitely things where I spent probably the first couple of years of my career just trying to convince clients to even consider utilizing these channels, let alone how to use it impactfully, but just, let's use Facebook as part of our strategy was kind of the biggest first hurdle to come through in those initial years of people kind of getting more and more on board with how to utilize these new tools. So DCI Group was a great experience for me and kind of getting my hands in some of these different areas. So did a lot in terms of social media management and kind of helping to deploy messages across those channels. Did some email distribution there as well. Helped to support on website. I've never been a terribly technical person on the website side of things. Have always had really great colleagues that I've been able to work alongside and kind of offer ideas and insights, but haven't ever been someone that's been kind of back there developing websites and dropping in code and stuff like that, but maybe someday. And then we started to do some work in online advertising as well. So that definitely caught my eye. And I, again, took another kind of dive a little bit deeper into the digital marketing space and kind of focused on online advertising for a couple of years. So I went to a company called Resonate, based out in Reston, Virginia. they were kind of one of the first ones on the scene doing a little bit of a different approach to digital advertising targeting. So at that point, it was really, you could have some behavioral targeting in there. Demographic targeting was popular of how you could get at your key audiences. But they were really kind of the first, especially in the politics and advocacy space, to start to really kind of figure out how to target people based on their attitudes and beliefs and core values. So essentially doing that by matching up survey data with kind of trackable cookies across the internet to find out where people were spending time, extrapolate that data to kind of build out these key audiences of how people, cared about a certain issue. So if you were, pro health reform, we could be able to target on that particular belief set and that issue alignment, which just kind of gives a lot more, especially in that politics and advocacy space, that kind of one-to-one for actually getting at the people and getting in front of the people that you care about, and then making the most of that moment, obviously, with the right messaging. So I spent a couple of years at Resonate, and then I went over to a firm called Banner Public Affairs, where I really had a lot of green space to build out what was their initial digital offering. So when I came on board, no one was fulfilling that role. We didn't have any kind of digital services at that point. So I had the opportunity to build that. Interestingly, the first client I had there was a chess grandmaster who was looking to win the presidency globally. And so it was this global campaign to support this chess master. So very interesting, but very cool, because it was one of the most unique things I've worked on, I would say.
I wanted to ask a question there, as I think you brought up a really interesting point you said digital was completely new to this organization, correct?
Mm-hmm.
And you were spearheading the effort to enroll what I'm assuming was a C-suite that this is a good idea, correct? Or maybe a director who then enrolled, but you were needing to enroll somebody in this idea.
Yeah, for sure. I think from an organizational standpoint at Banner, there definitely was the support to create digital. I don't think that there was a playbook of how to get this done and what that looked like. I would say it definitely, was certainly an uphill battle with getting clients on board, though. So it was developing what we could do, and then actually getting clients to buy in and say, you know what, we haven't done that before, and we're willing to try that. Because, as we all know, marketing dollars are finite and need to be leveraged in a way that you're going to get successful metrics. And so trying a new channel can be a little scary for clients. And especially at that time where there weren't a ton of proof points of how, especially social media or, some of the more programmatic online advertising solutions could be leveraged to their advantage. And there, I think, was a little bit of hesitancy and a little bit more of like, let's just stick to what we know works really well, especially, again, when budgets are limited and you're really needing to prove that value. So it was a lot of education, a lot of, here's why this is important. Here's what you can get if you are utilizing these channels. We did a lot of pilots in the early days of essentially just kind of getting people to buy in to say, give us 60 days, give us 30 days. We're going to show you what we can do. And the beautiful thing about digital marketing is that it's all measurable. So you're able to actually show that you are moving the needle in some capacity. And 30 to 60 days is in a lifetime. So that's always an expectation to definitely set along the way of, you're not going to be able to, affect complete change during that period, but you certainly are able to kind of showcase, here's who we reached, here's how we reached them, here's what we got out of that, here's how they engaged with our content. And, that allowed us to then start to kind of snowball and get more and more business from those individuals, and then more business beyond that, because we started to have some case studies to be able to share as well, which is hugely helpful.
So let me just make sure I'm hearing this correct and summarize what I heard is when you're attempting to pioneer something at your organization from a marketing perspective that's new, and Facebook right now is not new. Maybe it's TikTok, maybe it's Discord, maybe it's AI. It's really good to have a 90-day plan, a clear budget, goals, opt out if it's not working. This isn't like a year-long thing that's going to cost tens to millions of dollars. Is that correct of what I'm hearing of what you did?
Yeah, that's exactly right. And like you said, like TikTok is a great example now. And that's something where, I think it's an opportunity, especially for more of that public affairs, politics, and advocacy space, We've seen some individuals, some campaigns start to utilize TikTok and Instagram Reels and stuff like that, but it is this interesting kind of challenge of how you make public affairs issues kind of fun and entertaining to fit into that space and be able to become a little more viral. I think that there is a bit of, craving that information on those particular channels, but I think it's also a place where people go to be entertained. So it's
Right.
how you do that. So that's definitely something that we have started to incorporate into our campaign proposals. And there is, again, I'm resetting the same thing I did for Facebook. I'm having to do for TikTok or Instagram Reels of how to get people to buy in and try something new. And to your point, Andrew, I think it really is about establishing an achievable window of time where you feel like you can affect some level of change, have some, proven ROI to deliver back to the client so that they can figure out, okay, is this something we can continue to do? And like you said, always giving that off ramp back out of it and knowing that you can always switch to something else. Okay, we tried it, we didn't like it. Let's go ahead and shift back to some of the tried and trues, or let's test something else out, or this worked amazingly, let's keep going with this, which is ultimately the goal and aspiration there. So yeah, I think it's definitely just giving people a little bit of that comfort of doesn't have to be forever. This is a test. Let's see how we do.
Before you continue on your journey and share how you eventually got to your current company, I just want to add in one thing. When I was in a similar spot, right out of Allegheny, I was working at a minor league baseball team. And I noticed in the off season that no one had updated their social media handles for like 3 months. And this is when I was very similar to you, wanting to do digital marketing. I saw what was happening with Facebook and yada, yada. And I didn't think they were listening to me enough. So I decided to be ballsy and I figured out what the password was to the account and I created a post and I got like 1,000 likes on it, which like does or doesn't mean. It was just to prove the point that like you're missing out on the opportunity to engage with your people. And so I printed it off. And then the CEO was in a meeting with all the other executives. And I just went to the meeting and said, hey, hope you have a good weekend. I did this on social and just put the photo down in front of all of them. And I didn't realize how much it was going to piss everybody off. And then I came in the next Monday morning. It might have been, I'm just making this up. It might have been like Wednesday to Thursday, whatever. But I came in the next day and the owner wanted me to come up with a social media marketing strategy because he was just really impressed with what happened. So I don't recommend that. But I needed to do something ballsy so they could just see how much they were missing out on these channels.
Oh my gosh, I love that story. Definitely a bold, risky move, but it seemed like it played in your favor. It's kind of that sometimes you gotta ask for forgiveness later kind of thing instead of permission on the front end. Within reason, obviously.
Right.
Disclaimer to clients out there, we're never gonna, but yeah, that's something where that can be helpful, is just to have that proof in the pudding, however you get there.
Right. But let's continue on with you. I'd love to hear kind of the next stages of your journey and how it eventually led to your current company.
Yeah, for sure. So yeah, so I went over to Banner Public Affairs and had the opportunity to come in as the director of digital, building out what that looked like for the company. What was digital? What was incorporated? How can we leverage that? How can we get clients on board with that? So I was there for about 8 years. I actually had the opportunity to rise through the ranks there, ending my time as a partner. Had fantastic business partners that I worked alongside, learned a lot about how to run a business on top of how to, engage with clients, come up with really compelling and strategic and creative approaches. I think that's one thing that one of my partners and was previously one of my bosses and mentors along the way, he gave a lot of room for me to just have a sandbox. And he would routinely say that, like, let's try something new, let's test it out. And he himself was very entrepreneurial in his spirit, and he runs multiple companies. So he is just someone who likes to test things and is willing to test things. And so that was a wonderful environment for me to grow and expand kind of what my expertise looked like, because I had a lot of room to test and try and, pursue things with clients, or even just pursue things from a marketing standpoint for our organization, which is always a great place to be if you are if you are in a position where you're in an agency or a marketing consulting role, to be able to use your own brand as a means to kind of test things out and learn and, figure out what's working and not working before you even take that over to a client. So it's a great kind of sandbox to play in. So yeah, had a great ride at Banner Public Affairs. Really grateful for that time. And then I actually had previously crossed paths with the founders of my existing company, Strategic Elements, Christine and John Steinman, while I was at DCI Group. So many years before. And they reached out about an opportunity to come over and do what I had just done at Banner, which is build out a digital offering. They did not have someone in that capacity, and we're traditionally a field programming campaign. So very much kind of that on the ground game, going into key states or localities and doing kind of the media strategy, event strategy, just that direct kind of stakeholder to legislator activities. So they hadn't really done a lot of digital, a little bit here and there, but not really enough to have that robust offering. So when presented with that option, I thought, I kind of want to do it all again and do it all with even more sophisticated tools and channels at my fingertips than I had whenever I went over to Banner, where we were still kind of in the throes of kind of figuring out exactly what digital marketing looks like. So I came over in September of 2021 at this point, and have had the chance to kind of, again, do it again and build out even, like I said, not more interesting, because I was doing cool things over at Banner too, but again, I had a foundation and I had those best practices to know what I wanted to do, how to go after it. And so we've been able to really build out a really powerful digital offering. I've hired on, now I have 3 employees that are part of the team, which is new as of September 2022. So just within the last 5-6 months. So we're in this really exciting moment of growth. And again, just I hate to keep saying the sandbox analogy, but again, kind of having that space where we're able to try out new things, figure out tools we need to do our jobs effectively, and get results for clients. So it's been super fun, really cool journey to get here.
Now, feel free not to answer this if you're not allowed to, as NDAs or whatever, but do you have a itch to almost like start from beginning in the sense and launch Web3 and dive into that whole world, or is that not on your radar right now?
Wait,
like a Web3 offering.
Wait, say that differently for me.
So what I heard from you is, instead of joining Coca-Cola and being head of digital, and you have a brand that's been around for 100 years, like audiences and data that you can't even imagine, you like starting something from scratch.
Yeah.
And really building this whole digital ecosystem at now 2 organizations. And
yes.
My question then was, it sounds like with your personality, you like kind of being on the ground floor and building up. Do you have an itch to do that for Web3 offerings?
Yeah, I mean, I think that I definitely am very drawn to startups and kind of smaller organizations that are looking to grow. I find that really interesting. So I think, definitely finding ways to, figure. I'm also very like self-taught and like to figure things out on my own. I mean, I don't mind if someone wants to sit there and tell me how to do something, but I love to, if there's a new thing out there that I'm trying to figure out how to do, that is what excites me. That is what motivates me, is to figure out how to do these things on my own, and just kind of build those things out. So definitely, I think that there's a lot of room to continue to grow within my current role, and being able to really, bring whatever is going to impact our clients the best to the table.
Amazing. So what does marketing mean to you?
I think marketing to me is about getting in front of the right individuals and then making the most of that moment. I think, there's such an opportunity to, target individuals, get in front of them, and then you have to maximize that moment that you are actually engaging. You've got a second to engage someone, maybe less, a nanosecond, right? It is such a crowded space, especially just looking at it through the digital lens that obviously is kind of my wheelhouse of, there is so much information out there, and so much, if you're looking at one web page, you've got so many different distractions to look at. So you've got to grab someone immediately. So for me, marketing is that opportunity to find a way to connect immediately. And I think that's one of the greatest challenges is figuring out, based on whatever your particular goal might be, who do you need to reach first and foremost? And then what do they need to hear from you? And what is that connection point that's going to carry them through kind of from education to activation, where they're going to be able to care enough about whatever you're trying to push or pursue to take a further action and not just tune you out, because that is a really easy option for consumers, constituents, voters alike. There's just so much competition out there. So again, to me, it's about a moment in time to pitch someone, to get them to care. And again, it's a split second, and you can break through, but you have to really think up front about how to do that.
Have you heard of Liquid Death?
No.
The water company? So they're relatively new. They came out, I was listening to an interview with the CEO, and I've seen their stuff at Whole Foods and Sprouts for the last year or two. So it's a water company.
Okay.
They do sparkling water as well, but it's called Liquid Death. And so part of the psychology of why they do that is that it's for the rise of non-alcoholic drinkers, that you can be in party environments and have a Liquid Death can, and it says Liquid Death and it looks all like hard rock. And so people aren't going to think you're like a wuss or question why you're drinking as you have a Liquid Death thing. And they just think that's like a 15%, seltzer water or whatever you have going on. And he was talking about how they've differentiated in a very bland marketplace for a water product. And I thought this was genius of kind of the angle they're taking. And also talking about how when they're running their advertising campaigns or organic social media posts, it's not just Fiji they're competing against the whole Instagram ecosystem, which is a wide range of stuff that can distract you. So and connecting this back to you're talking about the importance of being entertaining and educational with your own clients. So can you share maybe a little bit more tangibly, like what does entertaining and educational mean in these campaigns that you're launching?
Yeah. And just to quickly react, because it just catches my interest, I'm going to look into this Liquid Death. I actually am a non-drinker, and so I always like to have something in my hand. So I have been amazed at the boom of the non-alcoholic market within the last couple of years, where it's no longer, no offense to O'Doul's, but no longer just like O'Doul's as a non-alcoholic beer option. There's actually a lot of other beer companies have gotten on board, like Lagunitas. I feel like they are tapping into every market they can get their hands on. It's one of my personal favorites from whenever I was drinking more, and they have a non-alcoholic option. Anyway, I think it's absolutely fascinating to think about how that market has just grown and expanded. So yeah, I think there's a lot of lessons to be learned there, because you're having to change a cultural norm in your messaging when you're getting out with some of these products, because I think in an American culture, it's just so ingrained. A good time is associated with having alcohol. And so you're having to break that through and then also differentiate from others within that marketplace. So I think good lessons to be learned there to kind of dig in a little further for that industry.
And I don't drink either, side note. And I'm just annoyed when I want to go out and have fun and people asking me why I'm not drinking when I have a water. Or you have to camouflage it and get like a Sprite with lime so people think it's like a gin and tonic, and you just can avoid the annoying dialogue and having to explain yourself.
I hear you loud and clear. Yeah, it's that, like, you want to feel included, but you also don't want to be bombarded by a billion questions of, oh, why aren't you drinking? Well, unfortunately, it's really not your business why I'm not drinking, but I appreciate your curiosity, but let's talk about something else. So definitely hear you loud and clear there, that it's nice to have something that just kind of keeps people at bay as well.
Exactly.
Great, but yeah, let me think about how to come back to your other question about how to make it a little more tangible in my space. So I'm trying to think of a good client to kind of walk you through, but I think one that we recently just did was a campaign, as we're kind of coming up on, 3-year anniversary of COVID. We actually have been working with a state health department to get people vaccinated. So this was a combination campaign for the COVID vaccine and for flu. And so we went into very resistant communities that were not on board with the vaccine, had a lot of falsehoods floating around, where, we were really facing an uphill battle as to how to get people engaged. I am not in that camp of being resistant, and I myself am wanting to tune out COVID information at this point because we're so burnt out on it as a
Right.
country. I mean, it's been an incredibly hard time, and there's a lot of fatigue there. So we really had to think creatively about how to get our message out. We had our targeting down. We knew how to get to people. In fact, there was really great data that we worked with a partner on, where we could actually reach people that were either vaccinated, persuadable on vaccinations, or anti-vax. So we were able to kind of know we were getting in front of the right individuals. But again, that's part of the battle. And the rest of the battle is what you do whenever you get there. And again, we're facing a lot of variables there to cut through. And, we got smarter as we moved along. We leveraged data a lot throughout that process in terms of understanding how people were responding to our messages. We used a lot of data that we derived even from, okay, here's our Twitter ad campaign. Let's look at what other interests these individuals have and start speaking their language a little bit more. So, we started figuring out, okay, well, this audience, they love hunting. So we came up with some really kind of, tongue-in-cheek, hunting messages about, like, don't cough and scare the buck away. Like, we tried to find some ways that we were connecting, infusing a little bit of appropriate humor and cheekiness to it without, again, being inappropriate given the subject matter. We did a lot of pets included. We had analyzed our audience and saw who was actually engaging with us positively on our campaign. And we saw most of them had a dog in their profile pictures or mentions throughout, their feeds. And so we started thinking, let's get dogs in there. We gotta have dogs. So we've got dogs and having cute little thermometers and little ice packs on their head, laying with their bellies up, and cute little things about your pet wants you to be healthy. So we had a lot of fun with that. We had fun with holidays and trying to just make people kind of use Christmas as a means to get people to care and to get out and get vaccinated. So I think, again, just kind of figuring out who your audience is, figuring out what their interests are, and using some of those little breadcrumbs to formulate what is a powerful message that's going to start cutting through. And we did start to see a nice uptick there. I did some that were like, it was in the state of Iowa, so I did some like literally corny jokes. So we really had to figure out how to break through in a way that, again, didn't lose the luster of the campaign and the importance of the campaign, but again, got people's attention and avoided that tune out, which I think is, common to see at this point, whether you're in that resistant camp or just, again, feeling like, is it done yet? Can we be over with this horrible time of our lives? And so, so we kind of figured out some of those things. So that was, I think, an interesting campaign to kind of be creative on and work through.
So I want to ask this, and do you follow pickleball, or have you heard about the craze?
There's definitely a craze, and it's funny because I recently saw, quick sidebar, I recently saw that as a target somewhere, like within some digital advertising platform. I forget which one it was. And I turned to some colleagues and I was like, can you believe that pickleball is like an interest that you can now target on? Because like I only know that from it was like an elective gym course in high school. So that is my pickleball experience. But now it is a craze, and that's what my colleagues were filling me in on. They were like, no, Lynn, pickleball is there's teams all over, it is the new sport. So anyway, I know about that much.
I was going to say you might find it interesting from a marketing perspective if you observe what's going on from a pure kind of marketing perspective between influencers. It's now being covered on ESPN, so distribution is upping, the celebrities, even some of the like messaging and meme culture around it. There's one account that I love, and it's making fun of itself and how like men who play pickleball are kind of like wussies. But it's hilarious, as I'm a pickleball player, and I think it's funny like how they're making fun of themselves. So it's interesting, to your point around needing to enroll people who are resistant to something, like what just this almost organic pickleball movement is doing to convert 30-plus-year-olds to take on this sport in midlife. So just throwing that out there that you might find that interesting.
That is interesting. And I feel like, again, I feel like pickleball is coming for me, right? Like I'm just hearing more and more about
You
pickleball.
can't go anywhere without it being brought up somewhere.
By summertime, I may reach out to you and let you know that I'm now a pickleball player. So I feel like it is making its inroads at this point. But yeah, that is a fascinating example of kind of how, even just from an organic standpoint, again, it's just growing and it's just trending with us 30+ crowds.
Something you mentioned earlier is that you now have 3 employees. There are 3 employees who work in marketing with you.
Yes. So we've
Okay.
got a couple different teams. So that's strictly our digital team. We also have
Okay.
a communications team, a creative team, and just our strictly public affairs team. So that would just be on the digital side.
So someone who's listening to this, and either if they're making an hire for an employee, a contractor, vendor, whatever, it's some form of marketing talent. Now, I think it'd be easy to say from like a resume standpoint, like the school they went to, GPA, but what are some soft skills you look for in marketing talent that makes you go, that person is going to be good to work with?
Yeah. Yeah. So I obviously, one of the first things you're checking is the resume, right? Making sure that there's some level of experience in the space that you're looking at. But for me, personality is so much of why I hire someone. One, I like people that are go-getters and can demonstrate that they are self-starters. Again, that's something that I kind of feel is definitely core to my professional growth. It's never being afraid to kind of try out new things, figure out how to do it, not needing to have someone give you a tutorial, but figuring out how you teach yourself. And so I often kind of ask questions in the interview process that kind of speak to a little bit more of that self-led personality. I also like to work with people that are, pleasant and enjoyable, especially in the client services world, being able to kind of bring positivity to the table, roll with the punches when you need to, and just kind of be an easygoing personality is another thing that I definitely look for. And I look for people that are just largely ambitious and driven. I feel like I have passed on people that probably have stronger resumes, but I liked certain things about them. I'll give you an example. I had, this was the first intern I was ever hiring. She actually ended up staying with me until she was a VP at the company with me at Banner Public Affairs.
That's awesome.
So was able to kind of work with her. She was my number 2 from the jump as my first digital intern. But, and I've told her this, so she watches this, it'll be no surprise to her, but she was up against another candidate that had more experience than she did in the digital space. So if I'm looking just resume to resume, that was, something where I would have maybe gone with the other candidate. But meeting with her in person, I had asked her, and this was kind of a turning point in the conversation for us, where I had asked her about, hey, can you tell me about a campaign that, you've worked on, or, that you find interesting? Just give me an example of something you've worked on, schoolwork, intern project, whatever. She whips out an iPad and she has all this stuff prepared and ready to go with, notes and slides and things. She comes walking around the table to decide to sit next to me and just like walked me through it. And I appreciated, one, her confidence, her preparation, and also just demonstration of, she could rise to any occasion, I felt like, in that instance. And it was just such a small thing, but it was something that just stood out to me by comparison to the other candidate, where I was like, this is who I'm going to work with. That's where my gut immediately went to her. So again, for me, it is kind of this instinctual, like, do you have it personality wise? I can teach you whatever you don't know. You can learn those things. You can get that experience. I can't teach someone to have a certain personality. So for me, and I'm not sure if I'm accurately answering your question, Andrew, but
no, this
for
is
me,
great.
it's so much driven into that personality and kind of what you bring to the table from that perspective for me.
I want to go back to the self-startedness, and it sounds like stuff even you've experimented with on your own social media account. So like I'll give this example. Sometimes I'll post memes on my personal accounts just to like test, like I'll do a test just to see if like, am I crazy, the only one who thinks about this? So have you seen the recent one with like the firefighter who's foaming at the mouth meme that's been floating around? It's not as popular as I would have thought. So like I did one where I said like every bro internet marketer when they're oh, can you hear me?
Oh, Andrew, I'm so sorry. I think I had a little technical snag there and you cut out there for the last few seconds. I just heard you say about the meme,
Okay,
and then it dropped out. I'm so sorry.
so I'll make a note. So Jenna, this is a point where we need to edit this out. So let me ask the question again, and then
Thank you.
we can go back in. Okay, I'm gonna do it in 3 seconds, Jenna.
Okay.
So Lynn, I want to go back to a point you had made around being a self-starter, and it sounds like you do some experimentation even on your personal accounts to see, what's working and whatnot. And I want to hear your opinion on why this is important. I'll give an example of myself. So there's this meme that's been spreading with this firefighting looking dude who's foaming at the mouth. And so the first time I saw it, it was like, anytime you criticize Joe Rogan to a guy, and this is their reaction. I thought that was hilarious. And so I decided, because I wanted just to see if my friends feel the same way I do about something. So I created a new one, and it was like, anytime a bro internet marketer talks about return on ad spend, IYKYK, like if you know, you know. And I just wanted to
Yeah.
see, like, does anyone else think this is funny and resonates with it? And I don't know, like, in a few hours, I got like 6 ha-has on the story. And I was like, okay, I'm not the only one who thinks this is funny and like this is a thing. So like in your own experience and like experimenting, it sounds like in your own accounts, like what have you learned and why is that important for digital marketers to really be like testing the waters on a daily basis with their own
Yeah.
accounts?
Yeah, I feel like there's so much opportunity there because you have full license to, share whatever you want from a personal standpoint, right? You can test things or remove things easily if you decide you don't want to have it up for the long haul. But yeah, I think being able to leverage your own personal accounts and like I said, even your own company's accounts where again, you have a little bit more of that latitude to be able to test and kind of see what's working or not working. So I think I also even will crowdsource with like a few trusted friends and just pop them a text and be like, hey, what do you think about this? Is this funny? Or is this make sense to you? So I feel like it's even just outside of your colleagues that you're working with on a daily basis to have those trusted pals that like are going to keep it honest with you too. And they're going to be like, no, that's terrible. Don't ever post that. That no one is ever going to get that. So I think, yeah, crowdsourcing from your own networks and then also just utilizing your own networks to test things out is hugely helpful. One thing that, we're kind of thinking about for strategic elements is, again, how to have more creativity, have more life, have more just personality and entertainment as part of our brand at large. And so one thing that, I had posted on my feed was I've got 2 crazy dogs here. They have been amazingly quiet actually behind this door, but they have so much personality and do the funniest things. And my one dog will routinely just kind of poke her little head up on my computer if I'm sitting on the couch and slam my computer shut. And I was able to capture that on film one day, and I was able to post that on my own social media, and people thought it was hilarious. Like I was like that Friday feeling, or like something like that, where it's kind of like that kind of, I feel like there's a big boom, especially on TikTok and Instagram Reels, where you're kind of like doing the parodies around corporate life or around marketing life and things like that, and just kind of again showcasing a little more personality into how the day-to-day looks like for marketing professionals or corporate jobs or whatever. So we were thinking about doing some of that. So anyway, that provided a really good test case for me to share to my, CEO and say, hey, like, this is hilarious. You got to see this. She absolutely loved it. So maybe that's something we'll do in the future. So again, I feel like being able to, Andrew, back to your example at your first job, have those bold moments where you're testing things out. Great place to do it is your own channels so that you can kind of get that ammunition to say, this is going to work and here's how we're going to do it. So I think that's a great place to start.
I have a few last questions before we head out. And in your current role with strategic elements, are you working with political clients right now? Is it more lobbying work, or is that back in the day you were working on those campaigns?
So I've worked across I've never been a lobbyist.
Okay.
So I've only ever worked kind of in the political communication space, and that could be across candidates, or working with corporations or organizations, associations to impact some level of legislative regulatory change that they're looking for. So right now in the public affairs world, we, for strategic elements, we don't do any like political candidacy work. We actually do have a sister company called Cadence, which does kind of firewall and does some of that work. But our strategic elements is a bipartisan public affairs shop. So we take on issues from both sides of the aisle, everything in between. So we largely work with companies and a lot of trade associations as well, and just trying to help to, affect those political agendas and helping to get the right type of change at the legislative or regulatory level that makes people's lives better in some capacity, whatever they're aiming to do.
So I'm going to ask a question, and it's going to be a little bit out there, but I want to know, like, is there any lesson from this and how in your advocacy work it could be applied? And so I really liked from a marketing perspective, and I've read 2 books now on it, Andrew Yang's Presidency. And so I would have voted for him, not knowing any of the issues, simply the fact that he had Microsoft Excel chants at some of his rallies, which is absolutely hilarious. And like, if you work in tech or anything, you're like, if they have a Microsoft Excel chant, like these are my people, and just humanized him to such a degree. So like, can you talk a little bit around like how candidates, these issues can just be humanized and really strike that chord with someone where it's like you hear a Microsoft Excel chant at a rally for a candidate and you're like, this is my person. Like I'm in. I don't even know what you stand for, but like I'm here for this.
Yeah. I think honestly, it comes back down to that, like, what does that connection point look like? And how can you analyze your audiences and figure out what do they ultimately care about? What is that one little thing that is going to flip them to the other side? I mean, coming back to the non-alcoholic conversation that we were having earlier, I follow a lot of individuals on Instagram just because they share that lifestyle with me. And that's something where it's important to me. So I'm like, oh, like I like you. And then now I'm like buying their clothes because they're selling clothes, so it becomes this opportunity. So I think it's finding those little threads and being able to then pull on them. I personally really appreciate about Andrew Yang. I like him as a disruptor to kind of and that works well in my brain. He's now kind of approaching things from a little bit of his new organization. Oh gosh, I can't think of Forward Party. Yeah. Where to me, that is kind of a cool disruption to the status quo. So I find him fascinating from that point of like, okay, so how's this going to work for you? Like, are you going to be able to get people on board outside of the institutions of the parties that have existed and persisted for so long? So to me, that's really fascinating of, how is he going to differentiate? How are you going to get people on board? Again, there is a hesitancy to ever leave that status quo of what you're comfortable with, where you've identified yourself for so long. So who's going to get on board? What do those people look like? And I think there's probably a lot of applications of how he does that, because that is a different way to go about communicating with the electorate and getting them on board with kind of a different model of how to participate in the political process.
So 2 last questions. The first one is, I think a theme today has been around experimentation. And with that being said, in marketing, and I use this example in a lot of our interviews, is, if I'm having open heart surgery, I don't want a split test. Like, don't come with all these like tests you're going to run. You're running this surgery and it works or I die. There's no other option going on here. But in marketing, we can run experiments. We can, shift campaigns, yada, yada. And there's a lot of failure that happens in day-to-day of marketing. Can you share, a marketing fail you've had in your career? It doesn't have to be at your current organization, and the lesson you learned from that experience.
Yeah, I think that there's a lot of learning and failure. And I will say too, like I like to instill that principle with junior folks that I'm working with, because I think that there is an apprehension to fail. You want to be perfect in everything that you do, but the real learning actually comes from whenever you have those opportunities to learn from yourself. So I think there is a lot to be, never to be afraid to experiment, because there's a lot of learning on either side. If it was successful or not successful, you're getting something out of that. You're getting some level of learning. One example that comes to mind, and this is from a previous role that I was in, where we had about 45 days to work on a ballot initiative. They kind of were a little late to the party, decided kind of last minute with 45 days to the election, they wanted to actually get something out there as a ballot measure, be supporting that. we kind of set the expectations a little bit up front, like, okay, 45 days is not a lot of time for us to be able to do this. We have to stand up an entire organization, a website, get a logo and branding done for you, and then actually start coming up with how we're going to deploy all those different pieces, right? Let's get ads live, let's get social media accounts live. So a lot of just stuff to just set that foundation, and then actually be able to get out to those key audiences within that geographic area, get to those voters and get them on board, understanding the issue, and then actually being able to go on election day and vote in favor of that issue. So I think the fail for us there was that we didn't hold to those expectations with the client. We started to get into it. They got excited. They were thinking we're going to win this. And, we should have taken that step back a little bit to kind of say, this is a foundation setting exercise, maybe setting up for future elections where this can come back on the ballot. Let's use this as an introductory period. And, ultimately they were disappointed because it didn't go through. It didn't pass. And, that's a bummer on our end. That's a bummer on their end. They're frustrated, feeling like, why did we do this? And I think had we kind of stuck to what our original proposal was, which was, this is a foundation setting exercise, not a exercise to win at this stage. This is step one of many to get you there. I think we would have had a much more successful relationship. And I think we would have had a much more successful campaign, because we would have been actually marching towards benchmarks that we could achieve, as opposed to things that were just a little out of reach. So I think just kind of setting those expectations and sticking to those expectations is really important. And I know I'm kind of talking about kind of campaigns at large and maybe not a specific experiment, but yeah.
I'm resonating with, and I can share why. And maybe if you have any other comments on this, is we just went through this issue with one of our own clients where they wanted success in the first 30 days. And we ran 30 days of ads, and in hindsight, we didn't do enough education with them around, this is just data collection. If you want an ROI right now, this is wrong. And so I ended up having to be really direct with them and just said, the only goal we need to have in our second 30 days of running ads, which you pause for 3 months, and so we're almost starting from ground zero, is data collection. And if you're not okay with that being our only goal right now, you shouldn't hire us. You should move on to another firm, because I'm not promising you any form of ROI right now. And they ultimately did not hire us again, which was good. But I think that expectation setting, especially in client dynamics, is so important. And when they're trying to push you to do something that's just not feasible, and standing your ground in that process.
Yeah, expectations need to be aligned on both sides, because it is just setting the entire campaign up for failure, because you're not able to appreciate the milestones that you have achieved. And, like we've kind of said, I think we've said throughout our conversation, is that it just takes time to bring people from a point of education and just understanding and getting some of that data to start reacting to it and making changes to your campaign before you can start kind of then bringing them to funnel. I always kind of bring it back to like a dating example, where like, you're not going to ask someone out on a date and then ask them to marry you the same night. It might work for some people, but for most people, you kind of go through a methodical process of getting to know one another, maybe upping the ante of the things you ask. Do you want to meet my parents? Do you want to go on a weekend away together, etc., before you get to, hey, we should start our lives together officially here. So I think different type of example, but kind of applying it there, where it's, needing to move through that proper funnel and having enough time and ability to be able to do that. And so to me, it's all about those expectations on the front end. And Andrew, I really commend you. Not a lot of people are willing to kind of draw those lines in the sand to say like, hey, like, this is the campaign. If you want it, here's what it is. And letting clients walk away. And sometimes it is, letting clients that aren't going to be, on the same page or working towards the right goals that are going to be achievable in that time frame. It's a hard decision to make in our industry, but I think it's one that, will prove valuable in the end. So it's a hard choice to make. So I commend you on being able to draw that line.
Thank you. So the last question today is, and thank you for going a few minutes over, I just saw the time, what is the best purchase you've made for under $100 in the last 6 months, either personally or professionally?
Yeah. Oh gosh. Trying to think of a good one. This is the one that just immediately popped in my head, so it's going to be the one that I share. I may come up with others later after our call, but So I am a longtime runner. So running is definitely like my hobby, my release. I love to run. I have had a personal injury that has set me back from running since last July. I got hurt during a race. So anyway, I actually just had a knee surgery.
Oh,
I'm
wow.
rehabilitating my knee right now, and I bought new running shoes, and they were actually on
Nice.
sale for $91, so they were under the $100 mark. But for me, that was very symbolic of kind of a return to something that I love and being able to kind of work towards that. So, there'll be walking shoes for a little while, but they will evolve into what will be my running shoes again here in coming months. And so, for me, I guess it would be my Nike Pegasus, which has
Nice.
been the shoe that I have run in for, gosh, since high school. I think they're on like version 39. So I think I was probably in version like 2, 3. I mean, not that I'm only 38 years old, so I'm not sure how many iterations they've had, but you know, uh, I've had quite a few of those ones, and they are a reliable shoe. And Nike has always just had great marketing, I guess, because they have never lost me as a customer, and I keep coming back for that supportive shoe that's taken me through so many runs. So
To
I guess that's my response.
to bring that back to marketing as the last question for today,
Yeah.
is that why you haven't switched to Hoka? I think is the other really popular running shoe, because Nike just does a great job with their like customer relations. Every time you buy it, it's quality, and that's like, I know Hoka's cool and it's over there, but I'm a Nike woman.
I guess I think I'm a brand loyalist in some ways. It's
Mhm.
like if you have not burned me, you will still have me. I mean, I will try new things. I like to try a lot of new. I have a lot of like dietary restrictions, so I try a lot of different types of new gluten-free things, dairy-free things. So I do branch out, but when it comes to a tried and true, I do kind of stick with it. I've tried like I think I had Adidas for like a hot second at some point, but I didn't care for it. No offense, Adidas, but I came back to Nike. So yeah, I guess Nike just hasn't failed me and hasn't given me any reason to leave them. So they get to hang on to me as of right now a lifelong customer. Hopefully they never change their quality or do anything from a kind of corporate standpoint that would make me, from a moral standpoint, not want to
Right.
support them any longer. So yeah.
Perfect, Lynn. Well, just to wrap us up, are there any links, social media handles, best ways to get in touch with you, best ways to learn more about your organization, whatever you feel comfortable sharing?
Yeah, sure. Definitely feel free to check out our company website. So that is strategicelements.com. You can find my bio there. Has a lot of the links to my own social media accounts right there within the website. I'm a big Instagram user, so you can find me at Lynn M. Leclerc, and that is my last name is spelled Leclerc. You can find me there, where I'm regularly posting about my two cute dogs. So if you like a lot of dog content, come and find me.
Perfect. Thank you, Lynn. Much appreciated.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Have a great weekend. Great talking to you.